JB here. Hope everyone's doing that Sunday, Monday, July 14th, 3:25 on this fine afternoon. Talk really quick about the markets. Go from there. Welcome to CPI Eve. Tomorrow morning we have CPI data coming out, and then the kickoff of earnings season. Banks reporting after the close Tuesday. Then we have PPI data Wednesday, retail sales Thursday, consumer confidence Friday, and mixed amongst that we have Fed speak and tariffs. Right? I mean, I was saying it this morning on the rant. Didn't even mention the EU and Mexican tariffs updates from over the weekend. And sure, it's like a non-event here. Markets, you kind of joke, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. But pretty much every time I've posted, I guess you don't call it tweets anymore, right? You call it posted or mention a chat room or or what have you. Are we green yet? The markets go green at some point in the day. So at some point that'll change. But for now, just fun stuff. All right. So needless to say, I have that little chart again from this morning in regards to the CPI. I would assume, and you have 3% is like the headline, 2.8% is the core, I think something like that. So you have to think it's going to be flat, or even if it's a tad hotter than expected. I don't think that means that'll do too much for markets, right? I think eventually, in regards in instead of folks looking at how many times the Fed is going to cut rates, it's like the market's going to start pricing in massive cuts after Powell leaves. So whether that he resigns, on Friday afternoon, it's funny. I make a joke that some of these tweets on Friday or updates or news events come on Friday during option expiration. Kind of frustrating. But you had Pulte, right? The housing uh, director saying that reports out that Powell's going to resign and he welcomes the news. He's part of housing, so of course you want to see rates go down, but we'll have to see how this all plays out. So I'm not as concerned as I normally would be around a hot CPI read, because I think even if that comes, it's number one, it's only one data piece, and two, I think that the path right now is that the market's going to be pricing in more cuts. All right, so that's kind of like the overall theme here. Take a look at the markets. I said 617 to 628. It's kind of the ranges so far for this week. We'll see how things play out especially in the next 2 days with earnings. That could change some things, but solid range here, and we've been trading right near the highs since about 1 o'clock, right? We're down to 622, 621, bouncing around, and then markets found some footing, and it's just been up and to the right ever since. Also some pressers by POTUS Trump. There were no shenanigans. I mean, made some comments, but not market moving comments, and then talks about NATO and Ukraine, and the U.S. is going to supply weaponry that's going to be paid for by the EU. So nothing moving there. Um, and that's about that. So we'll see what happens here tomorrow morning with CPI data. Again, I don't think it's going to change the market too much, even if it's hotter than expected. But if we do get weakness and it's substantially hotter than expected or a huge surprise, shakes market, 617 would be the spot I'd be adding some hedges. All right, that's overall markets. So then individual names, Reddit was struggling at the open, and then spiked, right? It does what Reddit does. So, well, it spiked at the open, sold off to 945 or so, and then spiked all the way up to 150. Locked some of my calls in. Typically, I like to lock in for 100%, but considering the premium on the Reddit calls, the Reddit strikes are 10% out of the money, right? Well, they were at the lows with couple days to expiration. I didn't want to be in a spot where the premiums come out, so I locked some in for some profits to cover cost. And then we had a reversal. So right about 130, and Reddit's a divisive name because right in the crosshairs of what people could consider a name that might get impacted by AI, or if you're looking at a bullish stance, you could say a name that could be something that benefits from AI. And I look at it through the 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 last part. I look at it that AI is going to have a benefit, but a lot of folks still think it's going to have its demise, similar to what they've been saying about Google, so on and so forth. But needless to say, there was a dip at about 130 or so, and you never know. Someone can come out with a short piece. They've done it before. There's people who have $100 price targets and under on Reddit. So didn't want to be in a spot where I lost the profits and the premium. So I closed closed the last out for, I wouldn't say a small loss because I already locked the profits in. I just didn't want to see those profits disappear. So close those out. At some point, I'll revisit. I don't know if I'll do it this week, but the bull flag is still setting up. So if it closes green here today and it's over that flag setup, this sets the move. And if you've done bull flags before, you take the mass, divide it by 2, and that's your implied move. So you go all the way down to 110, all the way up to well, actually it was 160. So $50, $25. So that would be the potential upside here. So you're sitting here, it was a 150, so 175. So that's kind of thought process there. I'll continue to look at Reddit. Uh, and then Joby resuming its uptrend after its pause. I wouldn't say it's unfortunate, but right now you'd be looking at its biggest winning streak in its history, 8 sessions in a row. Instead, we had that small 2% down day on Friday. Resumption here today over the multi-year highs at 1261 at about 11 o'clock, and it's been bounced around ever since. I took some more of my August strikes out for 100% just because I want to look to get some Octobers. So if I get the Octobers, those will go up in lockstep. So I didn't want, and you just never know. It is kind of riding that uptrend, but maybe tomorrow's another down day. So I'll use that as kind of ammo to get some of the October strikes, but not going to go on a rant on this one. Still love this one. I ended those TTD lotto calls today, the small spec calls. Plenty of time on the calls. Unfortunately, stock is a little under pressure into the afternoon. Uh, the thought process, a couple of reasons. One, I talked about as part of like an earnings trade. So uh, it's had some issues in the past. Last quarter was kind of like a relief quarter. Okay, hey, maybe they're on the right track. And then I think this could be another one of those quarters like, okay, they are on the right track and the stock runs. The other thing is we have a big read on what's going on in advertising with Netflix on Thursday. So it could be one of those names that benefits, especially if Netflix reports a beat and raise. So that's kind of the thought process there. I was looking for strikes into next week. If it holds here, or we'll see what happens tomorrow, I might look for some more strikes, even past earnings, although the premiums are expensive past earnings. That's TTD. And then SERV back over its 200-day moving average. The chart is so tight Bollinger Bands. Uh, you know, I I've given my little rundown on why I love SERV here. News, I don't know if it's news over the weekend or this morning that New York City is looking to raise the minimum wage on delivery drivers, or at least Uber, so on and so forth. But to me, that's just like another one of those issues that like free market forces are going to decide the fate of some of these companies. And I'm not saying it's down with Uber, but I think it just gives more credibility and rationale to a name that is able to deliver this last mile in this area like New York City. Obviously, once it's got to get there first, but it's been rolling out, and the market's forward looking. So it's, at some point it's going to start pricing these metro markets in, and I think it trades substantially higher. So not only that, I mean, it was 17, $18 back in February. I think that's its next target. I think I think it's going to happen before the summer's out. So the premise adding more strikes here today, and then on the way up, I'll start closing those out. And then last but not least, I mean, there's other names here. Let's see. Of course, DXCM is running today here. Roku's just been trading around $90 here today, so I'll be patient there. I was looking at Turn today, all the way up over $5. It's not doing much here, so I'll be patient there. VKTX up to 32 before pulling back. Not much to add on that one. And then some of these other names. I look at iRobot today. And then some of these other more speculative Hims and Hers is back over $50. And then it's funny. Yes, Friday afternoon there was news out. JP Morgan announced that some of these companies were going to have to pay up for fintechs. We're going to have to pay up for being aggregators, right? Information, consumer information, things like that. No, XYZ and PayPal sold off like in a big way, down 5-6% on that news. I'm like, this is kind of like overdone, but I thought there was maybe more to it. And of course, probably in hindsight, I should have got some more strikes, but PayPal's been one of those kind of mental energy wasting names over the last couple of weeks where I was able to lock some in for some profits, but I still have some left. But unfortunately, it's like not moving enough. And then when it does, it's like the premiums don't come in enough on the way up and they come down faster on the way down. So it's just one of those names I'll probably just stay away for a little while on that one. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back. Rock and roll.